Hola, espero que todos estén pasando un muy bonito domingo de Pascua. Yo soy Clovis. Welcome back and hello. Why am I here again? It's very simple. Reaction videos. In this day and age, everybody making a reaction video. Apparently, if you want to be successful in the platform of YouTube, girl, you got to make a reaction video. Pronto. Well, I'll tell you one thing I ain't gonna make a reaction video to. The Enlightened Redneck. If I know one thing about a videotape that you don't watch, it's that you don't want to watch it again. So ain't gonna be no reaction video to no Enlightened Redneck. In fact, I ain't gonna make a reaction video at all. Instead, I'm gonna explain something that's very complicated. Correction. I'm gonna take something that's very complicated and try to explain one small part of it. I'm talking about Tenet, the very recent, complicated movie by Christopher Nolan. Supposedly it's about going back in time, or an adventure story about the end of the world. If you watch it, you're gonna be confused. Now, the movie of Tenet is based very heavily on the concept of science. So if you want to understand the movie, you might want to start with science. Specifically, you might want to start with the scientific concept of entropy. Why I say that? Because very close to the start of the movie, this lady from the continent of the United Kingdom saying this thing about how all them objects that are going backward, like a bullet getting shot back up into a gun instead of out of it, it's because their entropy was reversed, which makes it appear to people like they're going backward in time. So if you want to understand Tenet, maybe you need to understand some about entropy and how it relates to time. So to say it in a very plain way, entropy is the number of different ways that you can arrange units of energy in a thing or a universe. Now, units of energy is known as quanta. And don't nobody understand quantum physics, so we ain't gonna go that route. Now, fortunately, in physics, energy and heat is basically the same thing. So we could just say units of heat. But units of heat is a joule. And nobody understands that either. So we just gonna stick with heat, because everybody know what heat is. Now, one of the most important concepts about heat is that it always goes in the same direction. Heat always goes from hotter things to things that ain't as hot. Everybody knows this. That's why when you place your hand on a blazing stove, the stove don't get hotter because of your hand. Your hand gets hotter because of the stove. And that's gonna happen each and every time you place your hand on a blazing stove. Now, another very hot thing that many people are familiar with is the sun. Now, don't forget, the universe around the sun does not make the sun hotter. The heat on the sun goes out from the sun and makes the surrounding universe hotter. And it always happens that way, because heat always spread out. Now back to entropy. Entropy is basically the number of how spread out heat is. So the more heat spreads out, obviously, the higher the number of entropy it is. And since heat is always spreading out, entropy is always increasing. It's also like an ice cube. Everything in this room, including the room, is hotter than this ice cube. Now, this ice cube, it ain't gonna take the tiny little bit of heat it do got and spread it out to the rest of the room to make it warmer, because heat don't go in that direction. On the contrary, the heat of everything in this room, like this book, is gonna spread out to the ice cube and make it hotter till it starts to melt and turn into water. And the same thing goes for every ice cube that finds itself in this situation, because heat always spreads out from the hotter things to the less hotter things. entropy always increases. Now, what's that got to do with time? Well, one of the ways you can tell that time is passing is that this ice cube right here is melting. And the more it melts for, the more time you know has gone by. And since each and every ice cube in this situation behaves in the same manner, time always appears to be going in the same direction. We tend to call it forward. So to recap, entropy always increases, which means heat always spreads out, which means ice cubes in normal rooms always melt, which means time always looks like it's going forward. In other words, one of the ways you know time is going forward is that entropy is increasing and making stuff like this happen. Stuff you can see, and it always happens the same way, so nobody get confused. Now, the relevant point for Tenet is this. If you could make entropy reverse direction, if you could make heat start collecting back up into stuff instead of spread it out, then this ice cube would start turning into an ice cube again. And that would look like an optical illusion. It would look like time was going backward, even if it wasn't. Basically, anytime you see an ice cube freezing back up into an ice cube out of water, you're gonna think you're going back in time, because that's what it looked like. But wait a second, what about this? What if it's some ice cubes that are freezing back up into ice cubes out of water, while at the same time, other ice cubes is acting like normal ice cubes and melting? That would be confusing. Well, that's Tenet. Some of the objects in the movie look like they're going forward in time. Other objects and people look like they're going backward in time. And according to the movie, that's because, thanks to somebody in the future, entropy ain't all going in the same direction no more, like in real life. It's going in opposite directions at once, depending on the object, until everything get all mixed up and can't nobody tell what's going on anymore. Good luck with Tenet, and have a wonderful Easter.